I'd like to request you to be seated, please. Everyone, I'd like to request you to be seated, please, so that we can proceed with the program. Thank you very much. Thank you. A very good morning, dear youth delegates, all the participants. Very good morning and welcome to third day of 12th Youth Assembly at United Nations General Assembly Hall. I am Gayatri Amatya, and I'm from Nepal, and once again, welcome to 12th Youth Assembly at United Nations. Well, you've had 2 wonderful days of interactive sessions, panels, mission visit, exhibition, and the fun and learning experience still continues to the 3rd day. Yes, we have more panels coming up. We have interesting sessions where we're going to discuss more about youth events, how to build youth leadership to achieve the success on MDG, and bringing the roads to the action that is moving beyond MDGs. So we have a lot of exciting things coming up. For now, to start with today's session, we have 2 speakers with me on stage. We have His Excellency Ambassador Palitha Kohona from Permanent Mission of Sri Lanka to United Nations, and we have Ms. Lakshmi Puri, a Deputy Executive Director of UN Women. So before we start with the speakers, I'd like to make a quick announcement. If anybody is still confused about the mission visit, if you have any questions, please meet Olivia or any of our FAF interns, FAF staffs. Please feel free to meet any of our FAF staff. They'll be more than happy to help you. And we have workshop sign-ups at the back of the room. You can sign up for any of the workshop that is available at the back of the room. And Conference Room E, we are open for networking, and holoback room at Conference Room E upstairs. It's open for networking and decompression. Well, with that note, are we officially ready to start our day, the 3rd day of Youth Assembly? Yes, are we? Yes. All right, so let's start the day. I'd like to share a quote with you at the moment, and which goes like this. Youth should be given a chance to take an active participation in decision-making in a local, national, and global level, quote unquote, UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon. And with that note, let's have our first speaker of the day. He has been a special advisor to the President on the peace process and a Secretary General of the Secretariat for coordinating the peace process. Yes, I'd like to request Ambassador Kohona to say a few words on strengthening the role of youth in development and UN Global Youth Summit 2014 in Sri Lanka. Let's welcome Ambassador Kohona.
Good morning, all. Fellow panel members, especially Madam Lakshmi Puri. There is a huge risk in being the first speaker in the morning because many people are not ready yet to absorb anything that is being said. So I'll try to drag things out so that at least some of the things I say will be absorbed. First of all, let me thank Ms. Amatya for that warm welcome. And then I should also thank Madam Lakshmi Puri for being here. Ambassador Carlos Garcia Gonzalez is unable to be present this morning. Mr. Al-Hendawi is also unable to be present, but I've seen Mr. Patrick Sheretta of the Friendship Ambassadors, the live wire behind this activity. To me, it's a great pleasure to be able to participate at yet another exciting event to celebrate International Youth Day. I've been requested to outline some thoughts on Sri Lanka's perspectives on youth in development, their participation in the post-2015 development agenda, and the ongoing preparations for the World Conference on Youth in 2014, which will be held in Sri Lanka. The increasingly large youth demographic in the developing world makes it impossible to discuss any follow-up to Rio Plus 20 and the post-2015 development agenda without taking into account their needs, their aspirations, and their challenges. Youth consist of a substantial portion of the world's population, and almost 85% of the world's youth live in the developing world. This is clearly evident in the teeming cities of the South. The youth of today, this massive population bloc, is confronted by a complex world, a confusing world, a world more confusing than the world that we, the grown-ups, experience. Critically, they need to find work for themselves and also make provision for a rapidly aging population. In this economically unstable world, work is not readily available, and the rapidly aging population is becoming a massive challenge to the next generation and to all our economies. Furthermore, women will be the dominant segment in the aging population. As the number of youth grows and their problems get highlighted, policymakers, national leaders, and the global community are confronted with a significant challenge. We must therefore listen to the voices of the youth at national, regional, and international level as we make policy and as we implement our plans. Their input becomes essential in this area. Today's policies will impact on our youth as they mature. Sri Lanka, for its part, has a definite policy of integrating youth participation and mainstreaming youth perspectives in the post-2015 development agenda. Since we are focusing beyond 2015, Sri Lanka is committed to mainstreaming youth in the Rio Plus 20 development agenda. We strongly support processes that mainstream youth perspectives and strengthen their participation. That is why we strongly support the Secretary General's initiative to appoint an envoy on youth, our dear friend Mr. Ahmed Al-Hindawi. Sri Lanka is also currently exploring the possibility of establishing a permanent forum for youth with the support of several like-minded member states. Your views on that initiative would be greatly appreciated. As it is, youth has not yet been highlighted as a standalone priority sector in the diverse multilateral processes on sustainable development. However, the reality is that in order to achieve the goals in each and every thrust area, the support, participation, and contribution of youth is critical. The active participation and contribution in the areas of food, energy, and water, the three inevitable priorities for the sustainable development goals, can be essential, not to mention sustainable consumption and production that ultimately will help to arrest carbon emissions and global warming, and of course the consequences of global warming. Their impact will fashion the world of tomorrow. In addition, they can be the messengers of better practices to the next generation. You, all of you, carry the sacred responsibility of ensuring that the world we live in is sustained for generations to come. The innovation and creativity of youth is vital for exploring new knowledge as we prepare the world for the future. Entrepreneurial youth in both developing and developed countries have actively contributed in the fields of green energy, ICT, and the media. Innovative ICT is largely the domain of youth. Much of today's ICT innovation comes from youth, not from men and women with gray hair. Think of Google, Facebook, and Twitter. Sri Lanka's policy goal of making the country an ICT hub is premised on the active incorporation of youth into the process. Sri Lanka, for its part, will continue to support upholding the interests of youth in the Open Working Group on SDGs and other multilateral platforms This is a policy goal for us. Sri Lanka has been successful in integrating youth into our national policy making and implementation mechanisms through our network of more than 10,000 village-level youth-led organizations and the Sri Lanka Parliament. Many of our elected representatives in the national parliament can be described as youth. There are others, of course, who behave like youth. Youth parliamentarians consult with senior policymakers and contribute policy inputs through the various parliamentary select committees. They are consulted by policymakers at all levels. The preparation of future roles for leadership and democratic consultative policy-making processes is vital for the effective implementation of all development plans and their sustainability. In another policy initiative, the Ministry of Youth has been amalgamated with the skills development institutions of the country to make youth more employable in both the national and international job markets. Indeed, they are the bulk of our human resource base. They are dominant in the new industry and service sectors. Youth will play a critical lead role in Sri Lanka's reconciliation efforts as we seek to heal the wounds of 27 years of conflict. We have to ensure that the pain of yesterday will not persist into tomorrow. Thousands of island-wide youth movements under the auspices of the Ministry of Environment are now playing a key role in environmental conservation and public awareness campaigns. Sri Lanka is a front-runner in promoting ecotourism. For decades, young travelers came to Sri Lanka looking for tropical bliss, grand historical sites, and religious inspiration. Many were backpackers, and these are tomorrow's decision makers. Today's youth will play a lead role as we expand our tourism intake. As a country which is on the way to realizing most of the MDGs, Sri Lanka strongly supports the need to establish national, regional, and global mechanisms that would integrate youth and youth-led organizations and networks as key partners in the formulation and implementation of the post-2015 development agenda. The UN regional offices would be an effective tool to achieve this goal. Taking into account the heavy youth engagement in the post-2015 development agenda, a 15-year time frame to realize sustainable development goals would be appropriate. Sri Lanka is looking forward to two significant youth events in the coming months. The Commonwealth Youth Forum 2013 will take place from 10 to 14 November in the southern port city of Magampura, Hambantota in Sri Lanka. It is one of the three parallel fora that will take place during the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting. The other two are the Commonwealth Business Forum and the Commonwealth People's Forum. The Youth Forum is organized jointly by the Sri Lanka Ministry of Youth Affairs and Skills Development and the National Youth Services Council of Sri Lanka. Organizational matters of the forum are entrusted to the youth-led task force, which will be made up of 5 youth leaders from Commonwealth member countries and 5 youth leaders from Sri Lanka. Additionally, and very importantly, Sri Lanka warmly acknowledges the UN member states who have welcomed the World Conference on Youth in 2014 to be held in Sri Lanka. The World Conference in Sri Lanka will be a significant platform to further enhance and integrate youth participation in the development of the post-2015 development agenda. We have put in place a youth-centered preparatory process leading to the conference, and most importantly, a commitment to a follow-up phase in partnership with young people in the implementation of the post-MDG development agenda. Our hope is that through constructive engagement with a wide group of stakeholders, The conference will be a concrete and results-oriented outcome that would contribute to youth development and empowerment, ensuring a continuing youth role in global policy formulation and implementation. The conference will generate two outcome documents, the Youth Minister's Declaration and a Youth Declaration. The concerns of youth will be heard and taken into account in developing these two documents. Deliberations are likely to significantly focus on thematic areas such as promoting youth participation in decision-making processes, securing gainful employment, issues related to indigenous youth, young migrants, and gender and environmental aspects of youth and development. I invite all of you to the World Conference on Youth in Sri Lanka next year. It will be a wonderful opportunity to see firsthand Sri Lanka's beauty, its ancient heritage, including 8 UNESCO-listed World Heritage Sites, our rapid post-conflict rehabilitation and construction, and impressive economic progress. Most of all, you'll appreciate meeting the young people of my country who are the beneficiaries of a state-funded free education and free healthcare system. I thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Kohona from Permanent Mission of Sri Lanka to United Nations. I'd also like to share a news with us that a Permanent Mission of Sri Lanka to United Nations will be lead endorser for Youth Assembly at United Nations for January 2014. Thank you very much for that. And I'd like to take this opportunity to thank our current lead endorser, Permanent Mission of Romania to United Nations. We have staffs from the mission, Permanent Mission of Romania to United Nations. Thank you very much for supporting us and making this event possible. Thank you. Thank you very much. After that wonderful remarks by Ambassador Kohona, we move on. As we all know, education is one of the most important MDGs, and every child and every youth has right towards education. Now we have a music video presentation, music video that describes the story of a girl who was attacked by militant for being an education advocate. We have the music video, I Am Malala.
tell me the sky's the limit, cause nothing could pull me down when I dream. I'm working on turning them to a reality and opening eyes and sharing a vision with every person who I chose to be blind. I wanna focus their minds and show that despite we're broken inside, because they're powerful together without a cloak or disguise. I hope in the future that I can look back on a new generation that's peaceful, that's grateful, they're equal, cause those before me to change for the people with paints and an easel. We picture perfect, you are attention to making the most of our time, creating more than useless inventions. I'm only young, so I guess it's down for you to decide. Would you choose to fight for what you believe in? Would you do what is right if I needed you? Would you stand tall with me right here by my side? Be the change you want to see, take a look through my eyes. I am alive. I am infinite hope. I am alive. I am infinite hope. I am
They say the harder the girl, I say the smarter the girl, then the stronger our world. From a country where we made fortunes of others' misfortunes and betray our own people, then we mourn for a portion of time. Always taught to fight for my rights. Malala fought for education and she fought for her life. It's hard to strive to be better when oppressed by the suppressors, treated like the lesser. Just be clever, ignore the ignorance from the ignorance. Society is ridiculous, but it's the world that we live in that chauffeurs are driving, denies our desire. Being silent doesn't help, it adds fuel to the fire. How can somebody young like me even find any truth when nobody's looking for truth in the youth? Life isn't a choice, so who are we to say what's void? Then Malala gave a voice to me, cause I am alive. I am infinite hope. I am alive. I am infinite hope. I am
Wow. After that powerful message of right towards education, now we move on to our next speaker. And almost after her 3 decades of her career in foreign service, she joined the United Nations in 2002 as Director of Division of International Trades in Goods, Services, and Commodities. And now, a decade later, she's an Assistant Secretary General of United Nations, Deputy Executive Director of UN Women, the United Nations entity for gender equality and women empowerment. I'd like to request Ms. Lakshmi Puri to give her remarks on youth and gender equality and youth participation post-MDGs. Ms. Lakshmi Puri.
Good morning. Thank you, Gayatri, and thank you all for giving me this opportunity to be with you early morning when I can catch all your enthusiasm and energy for the day and for life. And I would like to, of course, thank the Romanian mission as well as Ambassador Kohona for organizing this and being here. And it's a great pleasure indeed for me to be here to talk to you about gender equality and women's empowerment and what it means for youth and what youth can do to advance gender equality and women's empowerment and how it can benefit from gender equality and women's empowerment. But also I would like to take this opportunity to thank the Youth Assembly organizers, including the Friendship Ambassadors Foundation, the Permanent Mission of Romania, all UN member states, for making this event possible. And we are very proud as UN Women to be part of this initiative. Now, I just want to begin by asking how many of you know about UN Women? Only. Obviously, we are not doing a good enough job, but after today, I hope you will know more about us. We are the youngest UN organization or entity which was created in 2010, and we actually were launched in January 2011 as an entity to promote gender equality and women's empowerment around the world. It is committed to the empowerment of young people, especially young women and youth. So it's not only about women like me who are no longer young, but are fully with the youth, but it's really our mission is about change. And change and transformation is something that young people, young women and girls, but also young men and boys can bring about. And gender equality and women's empowerment is a transformative agenda, a structurally transformative agenda. And it requires you, the young people, to really take leadership on and be, as the song said, and as Mahatma Gandhi said, be the change that you want to see. Youth today constitutes the largest generation in history. So if we want to make a difference for everyone's future, it is today that we must act, and you must act, and invest, and we must invest all together in young people, in their capacities, in their dreams, in the realization of their dreams, and to make sure that they dream right, because this is very important. What ideals do they have? And this is true for progress in peace and security, human rights and sustainable development, and it is also true for progress in gender equality. Earlier this week, I had the pleasure of also speaking to another and some of you may have already been there, another gathering of young people, and I emphasized the very close linkage between tapping the potential of youth and tapping the potential of women and girls, and how that can be the greatest power, the greatest force for good. For good in terms of peace and security, good in terms of sustainable development in the economic sense, in the social sense, but also in the environmental sense, and also the whole issue of human rights, promoting human rights, because women's rights are human rights and human rights are women's rights. We at UN Women believe that addressing the structural causes of gender inequalities is essential to the realization of equal rights for women and men, and young people play a key role in this process. And one of the most important aspects of the transformation that you want to bring about in any area is about, but most importantly in gender inequality and discrimination, is changing mindsets, changing stereotypes. And older people can't do it as well as young people can. So you must begin the change of mindsets on gender equality and women's empowerment. Working with youth, we can address these stereotypes early on and start a movement for change across generations. This is also something that gives you an opportunity to be a leader across generations. And you know, we are really working, for example, with the World Association of Girl Guides and Scouts, which has, I believe, a global membership of 10 million. We have a platform there where we train and bring about mindset change in the young people who are part of this movement to think differently on stereotypes, to change those stereotypes about the role of women and girls vis-a-vis men and boys, and also on ending violence against women, for example, women and girls. So we really need to harness these youth platforms, and we are very happy to have so many of you here so that you can be, again, part of our movement for change across generations on gender equality and women's empowerment. Despite 1 in 5 persons being under the age of 24, young people's voices are not sufficiently heard by those who make decisions about them, about their futures. And young women, mind you, are often doubly disadvantaged. And I see here today, if my eye does not belie, I see more women here today than young men, women and girls here today than young men. But it's great to also see men, along with women, coming forward in these kind of assemblies. And we really need to bring young women forward because they are often doubly disadvantaged as a consequence of not only being young, but also being female. We call it intersectional discrimination. And you know how many young women there are, or young girls there are, adolescent girls? There are 600 million young adolescents in developing countries alone. So it is these amongst you, these young women and girls amongst you, that we really need to support and work on behalf of, but also make them the agents of change. And what is the situation of these young women? The discrimination faced by young women and girls can be seen, as you saw, in terms of their being denied education, their being the victim or survivor of gender-based violence, marginalization from decision-making in the family, in the public sphere, lack of reproductive rights and control over their bodies, and unequal access to productive resources such as land and credit, but also to essential services. It's part of the poverty, but women and girls, because they are valued less, become even. This is the other aspect of intersectionality. If you are a woman, or if you are a young woman, if you are young and woman, and you are poor, then it is a triple jeopardy. It is found also in the case of decent wage employment around the world, and we also find it in the unequal division of labor within the household, with young women and girls assuming a disproportionate share of taking care of children, the elderly, the sick, fetching wood and water, and preparing food. It can also be seen in lack of access to education and for girls and young women. So by breaking the cycle of discrimination against women and girls in the home, economy, politics, and society, and that's what UN Women seeks to do, through its intergovernmental norm setting and standard setting that binds governments to do more in this area, that asks them to adopt policies and measures that support women and girls in the economy, in the workplace, and even in politics, because it's very important to be there in the leadership position, to have your voice heard. And we are there to also very strongly work with civil society, with private sector, to change, to bring about the change on gender equality. And then UN Women also tries to work with governments to make sure that the government budgets, government development plans prioritize gender equality and women and girls issues. And investment. It's very important to invest in women and girls, whether it is the household, whether it is governments. Somehow it has not been given the kind of priority that it should be given, investment in women and girls. So we try to bring that about. And we are also working in 75 countries on the ground to support programs for gender equality and women's empowerment. Global development frameworks, and Ambassador Kohona referred to the Millennium Development Goals and post-2015 development framework. Now, the MDGs, which I'm sure you're aware of, have galvanized progress to reduce poverty and discrimination, promote education, gender equality, health, safe drinking water, and sanitation. The MDGs also highlighted many issues of concern to young people: poverty, access, quality of education, gender inequalities, maternal mortality, HIV and other diseases, as well as environmental sustainability. And there is this MDG 3 on gender equality and women's empowerment, which tracked progress on school enrollment, women's share of paid work, and women's participation in parliament. And it triggered global attention and action, and it served to hold governments accountable, mobilize much needed resources, and stimulate new laws, policies, programs, and data. Now, the post-2015 development framework must build on this progress and go further to address structural causes of discrimination and inequality. And UN Women are proposing a stand-alone goal, a comprehensive new generation development goal on achieving gender equality and women's empowerment with 3 components: ending violence against women and girls as the first target, which includes the concept of personal security, safety, and integrity. The second target relates to choice, access to resources, building of capabilities, and all aspects of economic empowerment, social empowerment, and also contribution to environmental sustainability. And this includes rights ranging from land rights and property rights for women and girls to sexual and reproductive health and rights. Then we move to the third target that we have included in the gender goal, which relates to voice, participation, and leadership. And we want that women and girls are enabled to, and governments are held accountable on that through special measures and policies to enable that, to have a stronger voice in decision-making in the household, in the private sector, in the company boards and their participation in the private sector and economic activity at the leadership and managerial positions, and also in the public institutions. And it's not only Parliament that we are talking of. We are also talking of other areas, other public institutions, whether it is the judiciary, whether it is law enforcement. We would want that these goals or these targets also take into account all public institutions that have an impact on development. So, we hope that you, through your youth voices and your channels and platforms, and using the social media as well, will support this new generation gender goal. Men and women, all of you must support this. You must be engaged, and we are very much involved in doing that. So that's why you must also participate in processes shaping the future development agenda. The last time in 2000, when the MDGs were being discussed, actually there was no public or no civic participation. This time, it's a totally different scene. So it's a great opportunity for you to be part of this movement for development for all. That is what the post-2015 framework we hope will be. So please engage. We are committed to youth participation in the discussions on the post-2015 agenda. We are already reaching out to you at the national and regional and global levels. We also count on you as key allies in pushing forward the gender equality and women's empowerment agenda as you shape the world you want. And what is so special, people would ask, especially older people like me, ask about youth. And I always like to say that it is the passion, the energy, the creativity of youth that rebuilds the world for them, but for others, for us as well. And it makes all things alive and significant. So, I would like to ask you to rise and shine in bringing together these two biggest untapped potentials of people, of youth and of women and girls. Let's bring these two forces together for everyone's good. And I was quite inspired by Malala, and I, in fact, thought that we should have brought our own video and shown our video on the UN Women song. So I would like to end with, I can't sing, so I'm just going to read out the song, the words of the last stanza. We are one woman, your victories lift us all. We are one woman, you rise, and we stand tall. We are one woman, your world is mine, and we shall shine. Shine, 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 we shall shine. To you all I say, rise and shine. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Lakshmi Puri. Thank you very much for that wonderful remarks. After these two wonderful speakers, now we open the session, we open the floor for question answers to the speaker. If any of the youth participants have questions, please raise your hand. Upon the selection, turn on your microphone and place the question on the microphone once it turns red. Or you are invited to come at front, either at left or right, if you want to be webcasted live on UNTV and go all over the world. I am very much sure our FAF intern, staff, crew members are going to help and guide you with that. So please feel free to come forward or put your questions on microphone from your seat. Any questions, youth participant? Yes, lady over there? Yes.
I want to be talking to Madam that just finished her presentation. My name is Jofia Nankyor Gupar from Nigeria, and I'm happy about her presentation, but I don't know what the UN women are doing concerning young women that have been abused. Because actually I'm an advocate of young women development, and that was why I took interest in her presentation. Because from my experience as a youth leader, I have found out that I have to fight my way to where I am today through the grace of God, because I have been denied and tried to be abused. But persistence has brought me to where I am today. And so I don't know what the UN women have in stock or the projects they have for young women, because we are interested. We have the young women, we know where they are, and we know their passion when it comes to their own personal development. So, and I also want a situation whereby the UN women should make themselves available for us today, so that we can chat with them and to also help them with some informations, because they can't have it all. Thank you.
Yes, I would like to request Ms. Lakshmi Puri to give a short remarks on her questions regarding how can UN women address the issues of domestic violence, and how can young women from all over the world get participated and get involved with the projects, different projects of UN women.
Thank you for that question, and thank you for your interest in what UN women can do, particularly in the area of ending violence against girls and women, young women. I just want to draw your attention to the agreed conclusions that were adopted in the Commission on Status of Women this March. And this is a comprehensive, and this was supported, of course, by UN Women, and this is a comprehensive global plan of implementation on ending violence against women, to which all countries have committed themselves. And this is the beginning, of course, of how countries then must implement what they have committed to. But of course, this is part of an ongoing, norms and standards, global standards on human rights and women's rights and ending violence against women, which each country must follow. But we also work at the country level to take forward the 5 aspects of ending violence against women that this agreed conclusions addresses. One is prevention. And you would have seen in your own work how prevention is the best policy in terms of supporting and changing mindsets, changing stereotypes about how young girls are to be looked at as objects of violence, as someone who are valued less, whether it's in the family or it's in the community or it's in the public spaces, at the workplace. So the first thing is education, mindset change, economic empowerment. Young girls are also vulnerable because they are not economically empowered. So all of those aspects are, for the first time, prevention has become a very major agenda. And UN Women is supporting prevention programs around the world. Second, we are also very much engaged in terms of protection of women, particularly, in the context of how the infrastructure. We are involved in Safe Cities programs. There are 20 cities around the world where we are engaged in Safe Cities programs. How can law enforcement authorities, judicial authorities, how other service providing authorities like transport and others can be more protective in terms of violence against young women. Then the third aspect that we are very much focused on, how to provide multi-sectoral response to victims and survivors of violence. And this is something that is really at the heart of your question. Because if you have these, you can have just a shelter, which is a temporary shelter for young women who have been abused or against whom violence, or who are victims or survivors of violence. But what we are, and through this agreed conclusion, we are also pushing, is to have in every country universal access for young women to critical emergency services, in terms of when there is abuse and violence. A woman should be able to have access to a hotline. She should be able to go to a one-stop crisis center where she is provided health and medical support, where she is provided psychosocial counseling, where she is provided legal aid, where there is police to take down her complaint and to act against it. And so, this is that one-stop crisis center, one-stop shop that should be supporting, and which is also acting as a more longer-term rehabilitation and support. It's a kind of reconstruction and rebuilding of the young woman's confidence and her re-entry and mainstreaming into whether it's the world of education or work. This is what we are really strongly supporting in a number of countries, including in Africa. And this is something that we really want to take forward in a major way. But also access to justice for women, those who have been victims. But these multi-sectoral response centers help the conviction of perpetrators, because you have police, you have forensic in the case of rape and sexual assault. You have on the spot all the services coming together. The conviction rates go up several times when you are able to access it. So it's the route to justice is also smoother. But overall, this is indeed a very major challenge, and statistics show that young women are the largest group of women and girls facing violence. The young women are including sexual violence. So we are very much prioritizing that, and we want to work with you. And I have my colleague here, Alice Ruxton, who is sitting right up in front. Alice, if you can get up and perhaps get up, and then after we've finished, you can perhaps talk to her, and she will give you leads and contacts, including in Nigeria. We have a strong UN Women presence in Nigeria.
Thank you very much, Lakshmi Puri. Thank you for sharing with us. Thank you for sharing with us the latest development of UN Women. And yes, we definitely encourage you to network, to meet with the speakers, and if you have any further questions, even after this session. Moving on with the questions ahead. Any more questions? Yes, over there. Oh, okay, go ahead.
Thank you. Okay, I'm Ivan Yelloway. I'm from the Republic of Liberia. I want to say thank you for the presentation to the director of the UN Women, the deputy director. My question has to do with the rising teenage pregnancy in West Africa, especially in Liberia. And majority of the young women in Liberia, before they reach the age of 19, they are pregnant. And this denies them access to education and also access to empowerment. So what measures are put into place by UN Women to curb such menace? Thank you.
Thank you very much for the question. Ms. Puri.
Thank you, and thank you for the young man for asking a question which is really important for gender equality and women's rights. Indeed, this is a very, this raises an important, and very fundamental matter of sexual and reproductive health and reproductive rights of women and girls. Traditional harmful practices and patriarchal constructs of owning women and girls as property who have no rights on their own body is one of the worst, the biggest challenges we have in terms of trying to change mindsets. And that's there in Africa, in Asia, in many other places. So the biggest thing that we need to do is to be able to educate the communities, families, but also the girls themselves, that they are the masters of their own body, that they have sexual and reproductive health, that they have a right to highest standards of sexual and reproductive health, and reproductive rights, which means that they have a right to decide whether or not to have, how many children to have, when to have, whom to marry, all of that. So in that context, we are very much strongly advocating, along with the United Nations Population Fund, we are advocating for universal access to contraception. This is one of the most important elements of ensuring sexual and reproductive health and rights, and linked to, of course, all aspects of gender equality and women's empowerment related. I talked about prevention. This is also part of prevention. When you talk about teen pregnancy, child marriage, it's all, these are all linked. And the prevention aspect is also very important, to educate girls, educate families that this is not the right way to go, and then to provide them the services. So contraception services and access to contraception services is a very important aspect, along with gender equality and women's empowerment related consciousness raising and education.
Thank you very much, Ms. Lakshmi Puri. And to move on, I would like to put a question for Ambassador Kohona. I'd like to request you to explain a little bit about the role of youth in post-conflict development and peace process.
Thank you for that question. Sri Lanka has embarked on a reconciliation process, and an essential part of this process is youth. Again, the process that we have developed, we have adopted, may not necessarily reflect anything else from anywhere else in the world. We have, of course, borrowed elements from other experiences, but what we have developed is essentially our own. There are many elements to it, and in fact, there is no one single element that can be highlighted and said that this is the role of youth in reconciliation. In fact, it may be difficult to identify what the youth are doing, but they are playing a major role. First of all, the education system. The system has been gradually modified and continues to be modified to emphasize the commonalities between our different ethnicities and different religions. In the past, there were some efforts to create differences and consolidate those differences. But now the emphasis is on exploring commonalities and also developing common themes. There's also another very important element that has been now consolidated within the education system. The two key languages are being taught to all students. The majority is Sinhala. It's a language of about 75% of the population. The main minority is Tamil, and that's about 10% of the population. These two languages are being taught to almost everybody within the country. Of course, given that Sri Lanka is a poor developing country, you cannot expect this teaching to take place at the same level in every school, but it is happening. You also must remember, as I mentioned before, Sri Lanka has a free government-funded education system from kindergarten to university. So everybody goes to school, and it's compulsory. You must go to school up to the age of, up to year 10. Whether you like it or not, you've got to go to school. The education system emphasizes the commonalities and also the need to learn two languages. And then admission to institutions of higher learning. It is now essentially based on merit rather than on ethnic differences or religious differences. The government-funded education institutions of higher learning all admit students on the basis of merit. So again, a very strong emphasis on treating everyone alike and treating the meritorious better. Another element, big element in our approach is sports. Sports has been used as a tool for bringing the conflicting elements together, back together. I must say that though, even during the conflict, our main sporting body, cricket, Sri Lanka is one of the better teams in the world, consisted of all the nationalities in the country. The captains of the team came from different nationalities. Again, they were not selected because they belonged to a particular nationality or as a concession to a particular nationality, but because they were good. At one point, what we refer to as a thrower or a bowler came from the Tamil minority, and to this day, he happens to be the best bowler in the world. We also have engaged in a process of exchanges between schools from different areas. It is happening to a great extent now, and children from remote areas come and spend time in the cities. Children from city schools go and spend time in remote areas, and which is working, because for the longest time there was a feeling that a particular segment of the community was evil, because there was no contact between people of these two communities. Now, when they get the opportunity to play with them, to eat with them, to sleep with them, the problems tend to get diminished to a considerable extent. And also very important, the economic opportunities. The government has pumped in over $2.5 billion into the former conflict-affected areas, because there is a feeling that one of the major reasons for the conflict was marginalization and economic deprivation. Consequently, a huge undertaking is in progress. Roads are being built, irrigation canals are being constructed, harbors, airfields, schools, clinics, etc. $2.5 billion have been pumped into that area, and that's a huge investment for a country whose per capita income is only $3,200 per year. But this has been done in the belief that giving equal economic opportunity will also be one way of healing the wounds of the past and bringing the country together. Of course, very importantly, and this is something that a lot of people tend to forget, is that under Sri Lanka's constitution, it is absolutely illegal to discriminate on the basis of race, religion, ethnicity, or sexual preference. It's absolutely watertight. anyone could go invoke the Supreme Court at short notice and get and have a hearing if this fundamental right is breached. So, as I said at the beginning, what we're doing is adopting a multifaceted and a fairly complex approach to healing, and youth are playing a critical role in this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Kohona, for those wonderful remarks. Unfortunately, we're running short of time, so that's why I'd like to close the question-answer session. But like I mentioned earlier, you are encouraged to meet and network with our speakers. We have Miss Alice from UN Women and Miss Dipti from Permanent Mission of Sri Lanka to United Nations. If you have any further queries, if you'd like to put any questions, please feel free to meet them and network with them. Thank you very much. Oh, yes.
Thank you. I'm sorry, but I just want to give one more message. You know, we at UN Women are already working on the commemoration of the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action. This was a huge conference. I know that many Chinese students are also here. But, you know, Beijing hosted in 1995 a really landmark conference on women's rights, and at that conference, a very strong program of action and plan of action for women's empowerment and gender equality was adopted, and that really forms the inspiration, the guidance to the international community to move forward to gender equality and women's empowerment. So we want that as we go forward between now and 2015, when Beijing platform we would be commemorating 20 years of, we would want that youth be very much engaged. All of you, I call upon you to be fully engaged in the preparations for this commemoration at the national, regional, and global level. It will be a very interactive process. We have a social media campaign which will be launched. And so we call upon you to be part of this, because one of the most important objectives of this commemoration is to really get youth, a whole new generation of women and girls, of men and boys engaged and involved and energized by the cause. So join the cause. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Lakshmi Puri, and also thank you, Ambassador Kohona, for the wonderful views and inspiring us. Thank you very much. It was a wonderful pleasure having both of you on stage. And to move on, I have a question for you all. How many of you play digital game on your smartphone, tablets, PC? How many of you play digital game? So many few people. I'm having a hard time believing that so few of you play games. Anyways, now next question is, how many of you think that digital games can make a powerful and positive impact in our societies? I do. Yes, our video games are often accused of wasting time and promoting violence, but not all of them. There are new video games that are socially responsible and that have pretty lofty goal of saving the world. Yes, and now we present you one of those socially responsible game, and we have on stage with us Ms. Michelle Byrd, co-president for Games for Change, and she is going to demonstrate the game The Half Sky, and together we are going to explore how to turn oppressions into opportunities for women all over the world. Ms. Michelle.
Okay, because I'm doing a demonstration of the game, I actually need to be tied to this very specific spot. So I'm sorry for those of you I can't actually see. I want to thank the organizers for the invitation. And just to begin, I'm going to tell you a very, very quick story, which is Half the Sky Turning Oppression into Opportunity for Women Worldwide, is a book. It was published in 2009 by Nicholas Kristof from the New York Times, op-ed columnist, and his wife, Cheryl Wu Dunn. They are Pulitzer Prize winners. And the story is this, it's pretty brief. But if you are a journalist for the New York Times and you are winning Pulitzer Prize for your coverage of the crisis in Darfur, and you're frustrated by, speaking, reaching but so many people, how do you think about tools outside of the newspaper that might enable you to reach more people? That was really sort of the story of how Nick Kristof and Cheryl Wu Dunn came to Games for Change. And just a very quick note, Games for Change is a nonprofit organization. We're based here in New York City. There are actually Games for Change organizations for those of you from other countries, in South Korea, in Europe, so in Germany and in France and in Brazil. So I would encourage you, if you are from any of those countries, to please think about getting involved with Games for Change in those countries. So basically, they've come to the organization. They have heard that there is this game that was funded by MTV. It was a competition called Darfur is Dying, that it's millions of people playing this game, and it's on Darfur. And you're a New York Times Pulitzer Prize winner for your coverage on Darfur, and you're not reaching nearly as many people as this game. Thus, you walk in the doors of Games for Change. And you have a new book. You have a book that I told you a little bit about, and now you want to make a game. And why do you want to make a game? Because you've heard that millions of people are playing games on their phones, on websites. And to give you some specifics about these millions of people, 300 million people, to be precise, are playing games and using social networks to play games. So why not think about empowering some of the time that's being spent having people learn a little bit about something new. So basically, Games for Change serves as an executive producer of this game. The URL, because I heard that some of you might want to play along or want to play it later, the URL is up there. I'm going to very quickly show you a little bit about what this game is all about. So there's a quick trailer I'm going to show you, a 1-minute trailer.
Join the global movement to empower women and girls. Inspired by the #1 New York Times best-selling book, Half the Sky, by journalists Nicholas Kristof and Cheryl Wu Dunn.
Nick and I wanted to galvanize people into action.
And they did, through an acclaimed TV series and now an adventure game on Facebook. Supported by the world's leading organizations, including the Ford Foundation, Zynga.org, and Intel, play a groundbreaking game and make a real-world impact. Recruit your friends and unlock donations such as free books and life-saving surgeries. Give back while having fun.
Because we know it takes a world to bring about this change.
Half the Sky Movement, the game, coming March 4th on Facebook.
So that's a little bit about the game, and what I'm going to show you, which I think is going to be pretty interesting for those of you who are trying to reach people on new platforms. Whoops, sorry, I can't talk and do this at the same time. 1 second. These are just some of our partners. So the game, as you could see, goes to 5 different countries in the game. You're in, you're in India, Kenya, Vietnam, Afghanistan, and the US. And it was important for us to include the US. If you're thinking about issues around women and girls, a lot of times for people in the US, it's sort of that issue is over there. We've got our own issues around women and girls in the US. So it's really important to kind of put everybody, this is a global issue, to put everybody into the same game. A couple of things and I'm going to play the game for you a little bit, but before I do, I want to give you some stats, just so you have a sense of what is the impact that this game that's been out now for 4 months, how many people has it reached? We're almost at the 1 million mark, which we're really excited about. So if you think about it, when you're trying to engage people, and I told you the numbers of people who are playing games on Facebook, that was the population we were going after, people who play games on Facebook. The majority of people, my guess is, who are playing games on Facebook may or may not necessarily care or be interested in some of the issues facing women and girls, some of these challenges. So for us, it was really important, and this was that story that I started at the beginning, Nick, Christoph, and Cheryl Wudun, they wanted to reach people who did not already care about these issues and weren't thinking about these issues. They wanted to find a way in which they could reach them through media that was comfortable for them, thus a Facebook game. So to reach almost 1 million players, our number is actually higher than this 970. Just in terms of numbers of people who actually went to the website for the game, that's at 2.4 million. So the awareness is actually quite large. And you might want to know, well, who's playing these games on Facebook? In terms of our game, some really great stats. 80% of the people playing the game have been female. And one of the things that's incredibly interesting, people are always looking for young, sort of that younger demographic. So for, where people are based, the top country playing is the US, but in fact the top city is Cairo. So when you think about it, this is a game that's reaching people on a global basis. It's reaching them on a global basis. Why? Because we picked a platform that is accessible just via the internet. And the game is actually available in both English and French. So I'm going to now show you, if I can, do this successfully. I'm going to give you just a taste, a little flavor of what the game is about. Let's see. Hang on. It's always a little difficult doing a live game demo, I've got to say. Wait a minute. Sorry about that. It was all working during the test a moment ago.
Maybe you could.
Let me quit Safari and try again. Yeah. All right, so one of the things so we're going to be upstairs. Why don't I just do the demo for you upstairs in room E? Is that sort of the best? Yeah. So we're going to be in room E. Well, my colleague Megan Ventura, who's over here, we're going to be upstairs in, I guess, just a couple of minutes. So for those of you who want to see the game, play the game, you saw the link up a minute ago. So join us upstairs. Thank you very much. That's okay. That's okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Michelle, for your presentation. As she mentioned, at 11 a.m. to 12 noon, the Half the Sky will continue upstairs at the Hollaback Room on Conference Room E. Now we proceed to our next session. Since now that we can assess the accomplishments of the MDGs, we need to take a look to the post-2015 agenda, which is a focal point for Ahmed Al-Hinawi, the new Special Envoy for Youth, Jane Goodall, Amir Dosal, Microsoft, the Huffington Post, Adobe, and many others, along with dozens of amazing youth who lead new social ventures worldwide, have been discussing ways where youth can move the MDGs forward in the past couple of days. For us at Friendship Ambassadors Foundation, the producers and creators of the Youth Assembly at the United Nations, the event also focuses on the success engendered by mutual cooperation among the world's cultures to forge solutions to today's most difficult challenges. FAF is proud to share a concern with the UN Alliance of Civilization, or UNAOC, for an alliance among the world's great civilizations. From the Rhythms of One World Music Festival and other intercultural arts events to the Youth Assembly and volunteer service programs, the Foundation creates transformative cultural exchange programming that utilizes the soft power of the arts to bring cultures together and promote diversity and inclusion of various peoples and beliefs. At the opening ceremony on Wednesday, we were very honored and grateful to receive the opening welcome message from the High Representative of the UNAOC, His Excellency Nasser Abdulaziz Al Nasser, emphasizing the importance of the advancements of intercultural understanding and cooperation to achieve peace through education, youth, media, and the arts. In fact, he was at our Rhythms of One World concert here at the General Assembly in June 26, 2012, celebrating the anniversary of the signing of the UN Charter, and he gave opening address to our event. In 2011, I was fortunate to be part of the planning and facilitation of the youth event of the UNAOC Annual Forum, which took place in Doha, Qatar. We facilitated a month-long online youth dialogue leading towards the forum, identified 18 youth moderators to Doha to moderate the day-long youth event pre-forum, tackling issues on mutual cooperation among cultures through the arts, education, media, and youth. In fact, some of the selected moderators are here in the Assembly, including Ms. Nicole Rapista here, who is currently with the leadership of IYC, the International Youth Council, and also one of the panelists at our Assembly, the head of the IYC Kenya chapter, Willis, who's also here. And one of the many programs of the UNOC to promote intercultural dialogue includes this very interactive and innovative and inclusive program called the Do One Thing for Diversity and Inclusion that allows youth from around the world to use their creativity to promote awareness about diversity and inclusion and help to build a more understanding world. I'd like to introduce on the podium a very special guest from the UN Alliance of Civilization, Ms. Marta Lopez. She's currently the campaign coordinator for the Do One Thing for Diversity and Inclusion campaign at the UN Alliance of Civilization. She has been working closely with more than 100 international partners, has several years of work experience in fields of advocacy, conflict resolution, intercultural mediation and translation interpretation in Spain, France, Tunisia, Portugal, and the US, and she is also the founder and CEO of NER Translations. Without further ado, let me introduce to the podium Ms. Marta Lopez.
Thank you to all of you for being here, and thank you to the organizer for inviting me and to have the honor to address you today. So, the Do One Thing campaign was launched in 2011 by the UN Alliance of Civilization and UNESCO, a wide coalition of major corporate partners, civil society organizations, and organizations regional from all around the world. As most of you know about the UNESCO, and most of you now know about the United Nations Alliance of Civilization because of my colleague already introduced to you. So I will go straight to talk to you about the Do One Thing campaign. The campaign aimed to raise awareness about the importance of diversity and inclusion, inviting individuals and organizations from all around the world to do one thing for diversity and inclusion. The culminating point of the campaign is May 21st. That is, following the adoption in 2001 of the Universal Declaration on Cultural Diversity, was declared as the World Day for Cultural Diversity for Dialogue and Development. But what is this one thing that we can do? We are giving some proposals, but the most important is what can you do? It's not what are we proposing to do. We give some examples as to learn another language, or to make traditional food, or to volunteer for an organization, listen music from another different cultural tradition, or play a sport related to another culture. But it's about do anything that make you get out of your comfort zone and get closer to other cultures. That is what is important. And you would tell me why? Why I should get out of my comfort zone if I'm so comfortable here? So because, as Lao Tse said, a journey of 1,000 miles starts with one step. And this is what we are asking you, to give this step forward. And as perhaps the suggested activities that we are proposing may have seemed as very simple, but in the longer term, the campaign will help to build open-minded generation whose action will be guided by understanding and respect for diverse cultures and beliefs. The campaign contributes to build sustainable peace. And you would tell me how? How can learning another language build sustainable peace? So I will tell you how. Most of you may have heard about the Peace Day, right? Do you know when is the Peace Day? It's in September 21st. And this day is a day without violence, and it's a very important day. It's a day dedicated to peace, and it's one step before us. So before we need to have a day which is peace, and we stop fighting with each other. But what happens if we stop fighting with each other and we don't approach the other? What will happen tomorrow? It will be the same, because we had one peace day, but we didn't have any approach between cultures that make us understand the others. And what makes us is still see the difference with fear. So what we propose is that in that World Day for Cultural Diversity, for Dialogue and Development, is that people not only stop fighting, but people do one thing to know each other, and to respect and value the important role that diversity and inclusion can play in our 1,000 miles way toward peace. We need to respect diversity and create inclusive society to have peace. Respect and dialogue are the secret ingredients for every relationship we've had. If we have a relationship with our parents, family, friends, we need to respect them and we need to have dialogue. So why should be this different when referring to a dialogue between civilizations or between cultures? It should be the same. We need to respect them first, and then to talk to them and get to know each other. So this campaign is not a new NIOC campaign. It's not a UNESCO campaign. It's not a campaign for corporate sector. It's a campaign that belongs to each and every one of you. And every one of you are invited to become the messengers of the campaign and inspire others to do one thing in support of diversity and inclusion. So the Do One Thing campaign is a truly global movement with over 100 organizations from 40 different countries and regional entities involved. Human beings from every walk of life, from every different religions and cultures, from a multitude of nations and regions, have been touched by this message of Do One Thing campaign. And the Friends Ambassador Foundation is one of the partners of the Do One Thing campaign that are inspiring others to do one thing. 90 Do One Thing events were hosted in the United States, in Morocco, in Indonesia, in South Sudan, in India, Timor-Leste, Canada, just to name a few. But today I invite you to organize an event. It doesn't need to be very big. It needs to be something that you approach others and to take the lead, because you, the young people, are the responsible to show to everyone how important it is that we respect each other. So, yes, these organizations have done one thing for diversity and inclusion in order to celebrate the World Day for Cultural Diversity, for Dialogue and Development. But in reality, these organizations and the amazing people who work tireless on their behalf have done much, much more than just one thing. They serve as an inspiration to all of us, to each and every one of us, whether we are government minister, business leader, or members of civic organizations. They inspire us to go beyond just doing one thing and becoming living examples of men, women, human beings who take seriously the lead in the respect of diversity and promote compassion, have cultural inclusion in our daily life. So the campaign has a very strong social media component. So we have a Facebook page that I invite all of you to go there. And I don't want you to like the Facebook page. What is important for me is you go there and you share your experience. You tell people why and how diversity and inclusion has been important for you in your life. What does it mean, diversity and inclusion? As part of the celebration and as part of the campaign, slogan contest has been organized, and from dozens of slogans were posted on the Facebook page. We had 2 selected winners. One, which is the first winner, the slogan was divided you fall, united you stand, and diversified you grow. And the second one was everyone is diverse, but only you make it inclusive. Now we are also running a video contest, and I invite you to take your camera, to take your smartphone. It doesn't need to be very fancy, it needs to be meaningful. So you tell us in 1 minute what diversity and inclusion mean to you. And you know what is important in this do one thing? That perhaps when you are speaking about environment, which can be similar to our campaign, but in a different sector, perhaps it's not so funny to do something for environment, but you will realize that when you do something for diversity and for inclusion and to know each other, is fun. So let's have fun together and let's do one thing and demonstrate that we are not going to the clash of civilization. We are going to the alliance of civilization. So today, I want to invite you to do one thing for diversity and inclusion. I want to invite you to imagine that day where all people stop violence and start doing one thing for diversity and inclusion. How May 22nd or 23rd would look like. Will people still be willing to fight the person with whom we're having lunch yesterday, that they knew their story, that they understood? No. That's why we need to start with this first step and go toward peace, but not only a peace, but sustainable peace. So let's go all together and let's take this message and spread all around the world, because you are the important person that can really do that. I want to invite you to imagine how the world would look like after that day. Thank you so much.